right, Stochastic, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you at a very special time today, 11 a.m., joined by one Matt Belman, because at noon we have the final regular season NBA Live Before Lock, and it is going to be pure chaos today. In an interesting twist, DraftKings is doing an early slate, segmenting all the 1 o'clock games, but FanDuel has elected to go with the 3 o'clock slate, as has Yahoo, and then DraftKings is reprising it. They're going with double main slate, so should be a fun one today here. We never know what these sites are going to do, but we do know they're playing baseball today. That will be first pitch will be at 1:35, and we have actually almost all of the lineups here. We're waiting for about 6 more, so those will probably trickle in throughout the show. We're going to talk pitchers ad nauseum, and then we're going to talk stacks. We'll give you a couple home run calls, and then we'll get on out of here because, again, we do have that hard stop. But appreciate everybody joining us on a Sunday. It would be great if you guys hit that like button. Always goes a long way towards helping us out. And subscribe if you haven't already. We're cresting towards 100,000 subscribers on the Stochastic YouTube channel. So that is pretty cool. Mr. Bellman, how are you doing today?
I am good, man. I was thinking about this before we got on air. Sunday MLB might be my favorite. I love the condensed schedule. Lineups usually out early. I just love Sunday MLB.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. It's interesting because sometimes throughout, as we get more into the dog days of summer, we will see the sites occasionally reaching back and grabbing the Texas game or the Colorado game,
Right.
without any rhyme or reason as to when they're going to do that and when they're not. But for the most part, they have kind of kept everything with just through the games in the 2 o'clock hour, which is far from what they used to do way back in the early days of MLB, when pretty much they just said, okay, here's the first game and we're having everything through the last game on the slate. Oh, and there was no late swap back then, so always a daunting challenge. But we're riding in today for a good one. Did you have any luck yesterday in the MLB streets?
I did not. It's funny. I did not use Joe Ryan yesterday, and I used Manaea. So I played 3 lineups, and I stacked Atlanta and Washington. And after Manaea wasn't good and Ryan was really good, I was like, man, maybe I should just pivot to a really low-owned stack. And I was messing with my lineups, and I had a couple San Francisco stacks in there. Then I was like, nah, I don't need it. Well, of course, Steve Buzzard took down the 555 with a San Fran stack. I wasn't going to take anything down because of my pitchers, but just goes to show you, like, sometimes making those pivots is what's really needed when you get off to a less than ideal start.
Yeah, and it's something we don't think about as much in baseball. It's harder to do in my opinion.
Rarely do it. It was just yesterday was like Joe Ryan was, he had 30 plus fantasy points in like the 5th inning, and Manaea couldn't get out of the 3rd inning. So I was like, this is a pretty big gap,
Yeah. And where it gets harder, it's more plausible and possible to do if you just have a handful of lineups and you can sort of curate them. It's harder to do late swap mechanically in baseball, in my opinion, just because you can lose some of your stacks. You can lose some of the combinations you didn't want to give up. It's almost as more daunting than
it's for sure, because the individual hitters in MLB don't matter like the individual players do in NBA. That's why when we talk about offenses, we talk about stacks.
Yeah, exactly. That's a nice way to kind of wrap that up. I lucked into my my home run call of the day on the show yesterday, Tristan Costas. That was nice. What was not so nice is I recommended the under 5.5 strikeouts there for Nick Lodolo. He had a no-hitter going on there for a little while, and I'm an unapologetic Nick Lodolo stan. Great to see him back in the league after missing the better part of 2 seasons. But shoot,
I thought your reasoning was right and was totally on point there.
Yeah. But it's just like, damn, he had it going. So there we go. Today we've got a couple wagers. I dropped those into the Spotlight Pitchers and Top Stacks article. That is in the chat. I also put one up there on the DFS Building Blocks article. I want to call that one out now. That is the under of 8.5 assists for Peyton Pritchard. I know this is a baseball show, but that number is going to go away. It's available at Positive Money right now at Sugar House and Bet Rivers. Plus 110, and I don't think he's going to get enough minutes today to get here. Yes, he played 30 minutes, but he didn't set foot on the floor in the 4th quarter on Friday, but he had 11 assists. That was the 2nd highest of his career. I think he will only play about 25 minutes today top. because he is the backup guard for both positions. So I wanted to call that one out. But let's get to baseball, Matt. So we have a lot of pitching options today. Actually, I'm running through my first stack here, but a couple of the players that were popping early for me as I was doing my research are shockingly, Jose Berrios is up there. No surprise that Corbin Burns is up there, and they're kind of my 1-2 punch, if you will, here. Starting with Burns, of course, this is his first season out of Milwaukee. He was dealt to the Orioles this offseason here. So he part of the trade was lefty DL Hall, and then Joey Ortiz went back to the Brewers. He's in the final year of his contract. So the Orioles are kind of pushing their chips in to get some pitching to go along with their amazing offense. But Christian Yelich is unlikely to play today. He's dealing with an injury. So that puts the likes of, Jake Bauers. Ooh, I guess we do have the lineup. Let's see who is in there. That puts the likes of, Jake Bauers did not make the lineup. So at the top, you've got Rhys Hoskins, Willy Adames, and Willem Contreras. And the rest of their lineup, not a lot of pop in it. Gary Sanchez is a wind farm. Bryce Turing, good at stealing bases. Joey Ortiz, the aforementioned Joey Ortiz, Joey Weimer, and then Blake Perkins. So this is even better than expected for that lineup there. So I like that one. And then with the interesting thing I had, and I'll turn this over to you, with Jose Berrios, the interesting thing is he, in 2022, was disappointing. Career lows with outside of his rookie season, career lows with the 5.23 ERA, 1.4 WHIP, and 7.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. The rest of his career has been outstanding. Every year he's outside of his rookie year, and that year he's got below a 4 ERA, most in the mid threes or better. He gets strikeouts. What is it about this guy that just terrifies us? It feels like he lets us down every time, but I look at those numbers and I'm like, when did he let me down?
That's fair. His strikeout stuff isn't not as good as it was when he was in Minnesota. And he's been more inconsistent. You mentioned the 2022 season. He was not good. And he's been good aside from that, but he hasn't been like an ace. That said, I don't know how you get away from him today. Like 8,100, one of the best matchups on the slate. Ownership is there. I think the 3 top pitchers on the slate are Berrios, Burns, and yeah, Milwaukee's lineup is definitely a boost to Burns here. And then Zach Wheeler. Anyone else, in my eyes, is going to be contrarian. So those are the 3 guys that I think you really need to hone in on. Do we get away from those guys or not?
We will find out. I'm running the contest generator and simulations here. So we had a good conversation yesterday, and I see I have the same when I do that now. It freezes my camera, much like it does with Lindquist. It doesn't seem to make mine go away, but it does take up some of the RAM here on my computer. So the interesting thing that we talked about yesterday is we had 5 legitimate options for pitchers, and they were mostly interchangeable. I felt the field was too high on Manaea and too low on Ryan, and then I also went with Pepio was kind of my guy. He didn't do very well yesterday, so there were a lot of choices, and I advocated for kind of capping things around 30% of the pitchers because Manaea was coming in at like 50 or 60% of my lineups. I'm curious to see what happens here, and I should know rather quickly. I tend to play that way a little bit more on DraftKings because I like the 2 pitcher sites, and I like to get some of the other pitchers around 10% because you can be over the field when the field's at 3 or 5%. And with as chaotic as baseball is, and especially this season with so many of the top line arms going down or not performing well, it's a decent strategy. I don't know that it's the right one. I don't think it's the wrong one. There are many ways to skin a cat here, but that's the way I approach it. It also looks like Jack Flaherty is going to be popping as well. What do you have for call outs on Wheeler?
I think Wheeler's just, in my opinion, the best pitcher on the slate. I prefer him slightly to Burns. I know that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Is it more matchup? Is it consistency?
So kind of all the above. I think that on any given start, you could quibble. Burns might have slightly higher upside because of his strikeout stuff. I feel better about Wheeler, and I still like the matchup more for Wheeler. I know Milwaukee's lineup is watered down, This team has scored 6 runs in like 6+ runs in 7 straight games. So no Yelich, no Cheerio, no Bowers, as you mentioned, but they're still rolling. I don't expect them to do that today, but I just think the matchup is softer for Wheeler at home versus Pittsburgh. Not a matchup I'm like overly excited about, but certainly not one I'm scared of. And I'll kind of go to our top pitcher tool here. Wheeler's got a 25% chance of being a top 2 guy. Burns has a 20% chance. Wheeler's slightly higher owned, but I'm just kind of right in line with our tools here. I do think it's Wheeler, Burns, Barrios, and then a really, really big drop. I know that guys like you talked about Jack Flaherty. I mean, he's not projected for any ownership. Maybe he's coming up for you. Raggins and Cortez are projected for a little bit, but especially in like smaller field, higher dollar stuff, I think the overwhelming majority of ownership is going to go to Barrios, Burns, and Wheeler. Between those 3, I don't have like a strong pecking order. I think that all 3 look really good in their own right, if that makes sense.
No, and that's good, because what would we start to look at for tiebreakers here, right? Okay, well, ballpark. Okay, all 3 of these are, let's just say they're comparable at least when it comes to pitching, or they're all kind of more hitter friendly.
Yeah, nothing stands out as far as ballpark.
Exactly. Camden Yards had some renovations, made things a little bit tougher than it used to be, but it's still, even in the spring in the old Camden Yards configurations, it still was a semi-pitcher's park, but it is going to be in the mid-70s today. Very pleasant day there in Baltimore. You've got 12 to 15 mile an hour winds out to center field. Philadelphia, very similar, 15 to 17 mile out winds out to right center field. And it is going to be in the low 70s there. And Citizens Bank Ballpark, mostly comparable to Camden Yards. And then, of course, Toronto, I don't know if I'm going to assume the roof is probably going to be closed today. It's in the mid-50s there in Toronto, but that's still a mostly more offensive friendly there up in, why am I blanking out on the name of their stadium?
Rogers Center.
Rogers Center thing. All I could think of was spell it with a T, center with
yes,
R at the end. It's they have made a few tweaks in the Rogers Center as well, taking it to be a little less offensive friendly. So those tiebreakers all align. We've got less than daunting offenses on each side, and then you start to look in at price, and with price you also have to consider popularity, which is keeping all 3 of these guys kind of grouped, because it sort of balances out. So I agree. Those are our trio to target. If you are going to put together the vaunted cash game lineup, are you picking 2 of those 3? Who would you leave out?
It's definitely 2 of the 3. And I know that in cash games, you necessarily don't play where you have to ride the ownership. Today, though, it just makes too much sense. Like, the ownership is going to the guys that make sense in cash games. I think, personally, Barrios is the lock of all of them in cash games. He's the cheapest. He's in the best spot of the 3. I think he's going to end up being the highest owned by far, just because Wheeler and Burns, people will play Wheeler and Burns together, but a lot of people will just choose between Wheeler and Burns. It's going to be one of them and Barrios. So I think it's Barrios and then one of the other 2. I really don't have a strong preference between Burns and Wheeler.
Yeah, I have a slightest of edge to Burns, and mainly because he ended up being my featured pitcher for the top play. Yeah, he narrowly edged out Wheeler, and I couldn't go without mentioning Barrios there, just for the $8,100 salary. Things are a little closer. I would put Barrios 3rd on FanDuel, and I would go with the other 2 for sure. But those are kind of the top 3 as they're aligning there. As we get into the mid-tier, I don't know is the right way, because the salaries don't necessarily align with mid-tier, but we get someone like Charlie Morton, age 40 season here. He has appeared in 2 games. His walk rate has really gone up. Each of the last 4 seasons, it's increased. Last year in 163 innings, again, it was 39. In 163 innings, he had 4.6 walks per 9 innings, which is not good. He does a fantastic job of just, I don't even want to say eliminating home runs. He has a sub 1 home run per 9 inning basically every year except for 2022. That's like amazing. And he does it without being a monster ground ball artist by any stretch, because he's usually around 40-45% for his ground ball rate. At the age is kind of getting there for me. We still like the matchup for him today, going against Miami. Miami's got a 4 implied run total here, but we're paying $9K for Morton, and I don't know that you're going to get enough to make, or enough for him to qualify for the quality start, which I think is really important on FanDuel. Another guy I'm not sure what to do with is Graham Ashcraft. He's kind of all over the place. I believe if you and I didn't talk about him, we did talk about him last week. Maybe I did with Lindquist. He has okay strikeouts stuff, but doesn't always get strikeouts, which makes it challenging to roster him. But a very watered down White Sox lineup. We don't have that in play yet, but the only what I would call legitimate hit batters on a day-to-day basis are going to be the Andrews, Vaughn, and Benintendi. Or without Eloy Jimenez, Yohan Moncada's hurt, and Luis Roberts is hurt. So this is a team that's just missing a ton of key hitters. So all of a sudden, Ashcraft looks like an SP2. I like both Nathan Eovaldi and Christian Javier, but not going against their respective teams, Texas and Houston. I don't want to tangle with those. So Luzardo, we don't want to go with against Atlanta. Oh, Blake Snell. Is this a remember me spot for Blake Snell? What do you think about Snell? He's popping a little bit here against Tampa Bay.
He's popping a lot. I'll say this about this slate. Barrios, Wheeler, and Burns are the clear 3 top guys, but there are other good pitchers on this slate, and anyone else is going to come with a huge ownership discount. So Snell, Morton. I don't love Morton here. I think he's a little too expensive, but he's also in a good spot. He's got a higher top 2 pitcher percentage than Barrios, a third of the ownership. He projects as the 3rd best pitcher on the slate. There's merit to going there, even if I don't love it. Snell, though, oh man, I love rostering Snell when he's not getting love. I feel like that's the consensus about Snell across the industry, is people really like rostering him when he's not getting love, and they don't love rostering him when he is getting love, a la last week against Washington when he was the highest owned pitcher on the slate and was awful. Didn't get out of the 3rd inning, I don't think. Had a lot of command issues. I love the idea of the pivot there in large field tournaments. My problem is you've got 2 horses in Wheeler and Burns. He's priced with those guys, and I just don't know if he's stretched out enough. In large field, I'd probably be a little bit over the field, but really, really hard for me to get there in like 1 to 3 lineups.
All right. How about Bailey Ober and Jack Flaherty going against her? Now, Ober, disaster in his first start. 1 1 1/3 inning. So 4 outs, gave up 8 runs. Who was the guy that got hung out to dry 2 days
Hunter
ago?
Brown.
Why did they leave him out there for
their bullpen? They had like no one. They'd used like a ton in their bullpen the day before. They really let him wear that. They wanted to let him go way further. Like, you don't see that often.
No. I mean, at some point you're just like, it's like when you got the goalie that gives up 3 goals, even if it's your great goalie and he gives up 3 goals in 4 minutes, you're just like, you're out.
They had to pull Brown.
It's not your
earlier.
day, friend. It's not your day.
I'm with you. They had to pull Brown earlier. Like, I get it in the bullpen, but you could see like he wasn't getting anyone out, and they just delayed the inevitable and made it worse. So that's how I looked at it.
Yeah, there's taking it for the team. You know, you get the Mark Burley, the Adam Wainwright.
Sure.
They give up 4 runs in the first inning, and then they go 6 and give up 6 runs, right? It's like,
that's not Hunter Brown.
No, it's definitely not Hunter Brown. So that's it. Guys, it's okay. We know that the slate doesn't lock for another 2 hours and 14 minutes, but Mike Mike had almost 10 hours of sleep last night. That's producer Mike. So he's just a little bit off. He's a little off in that. And then we're not going up to lock with this show. And then he's got to produce the NBA Live before lock show. It's okay. It's okay. He was just feeling a little spicy this morning. He's back. He's with us. He's having some coffee. He's going to reset expectations, but he's ready to go. I mean, he was going to go out there and milk the cows, slop the hogs, and feed the chickens. So here we are. Here we are. All righty. So, yeah. So when we look at Ober, very, very scary numbers here. But he's been good in 2022, 2023. So, we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. You have Flaherty, who has had a couple good matchups against the White Sox and Oakland. Oakland got to him for 6 runs. That's kind of the, take one for the team there. He went 6 innings, gave up 6 earned runs. He just had some bad luck in that 6 of the 10 base runners he had came in to score. He only allowed 1 home run. It wasn't a horrible outing. It was just hit sequencing, etc. Do you want to consider either of these guys?
It wasn't a horrible outing. He gave up hits at bad times with runners on. On a lot of slates, I think both these guys would be high on my priority list. You got to like the matchup for Ober. Even though Detroit's lineup is better now, they still strike out a lot, and it's not good. And then Flaherty. I mean, Minnesota stinks. Their offense strikes out at like the highest rate in baseball or right up there. Correa's on the IL. I think Flaherty is hard to get to considering Barrios is a little bit cheaper. It just falls into like the ownership discount is massive there. So if you're looking to play a chalky stack with Wheeler or Burns, I don't hate the Flaherty pivot. That's all it is to me, though, is a pivot off Barrios. I want to hear your opinion on him, but I also want to hear what you think of Snell, who you didn't touch on.
Yeah, so going back to Snell, I got carried away, and now I was trying to figure out how to pronounce Jose Buto. I'm going so far ahead. I'm so far behind. I think I'm ahead. Is what I'm looking at here. So circling back to Snell here, it was he had to figure out where he was going to sign, what was going to happen, all of that. I'm okay going back to him. I'm just pulling up his numbers. He had the last 3 innings, had 2 walks. You mentioned some command issues there. Overall, his underlying metrics were totally fine. 3 innings is just not really a sample size make, but he is someone that we know we can go to for strikeouts here. So I don't mind him. Tropicana Field among the better pitching parks on the slate today. So I'm okay with that. But as you mentioned, it's kind of those big 3. And then we're looking for some differentiation here. And we'll talk about stacks here. We'll flip over to that side of the equation in just a moment here. But looking at some of these other guys, I would be comfortable with Snell around 20%. Same with Flaherty. Ober probably around 15. Jose Buto, maybe 15. He's kind of on the cheaper side. So depending on what you're trying to do with stacks and which expensive ones you're going with, he can kind of get a little overrepresented in your portfolio, depending on what you are attempting to do. So, but I think he's in play. We didn't get to Cole Reagans. I think he's also in play. 2 guys I don't like, Nasty Nestor Cortez and Logan Allen. I don't like their respective matchups against their opposite teams today. The Yankees just crushed again I was only watching the second game of their doubleheader, but that looked like a rough outing. Tristan McKenzie got knocked around there. So those guys are off the board, but I'd be okay with Cole Reagans or Jose Buto, Snell. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting representation today. Do you have any thoughts on Allen or Cortez as we kind of get into the neutral? Not quite ready to pick on them yet, but I don't want to put them in my lineup tier of players.
Allen is a hell no for me, like no chance. Cortez is fine. He's too cheap. I don't love the matchup, but Cleveland is not good either. So 7,200, he's cheap. So I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. The one guy, I think Buto is also fine just because of how cheap he is. And Reagans, yeah, we didn't talk about Reagans, but he looks like the best of the next between after Wheeler, Burns, and Barrios. His price is fair. He wasn't great last time out, but that was against Houston. Like, I don't love the matchup, but I don't hate it either. I think Raggins is definitely in play. The one guy that I think has the biggest boom or bust upside on the entire slate is Mitch Keller. Started off the year awful, was not good in spring training. Velocity was down, was getting hit really hard. And then all of a sudden bounced back in his last start and was dominant. Is he going to continue that, or is he going to fall back? Probably somewhere in the middle. So he's just okay, and the Philly stack is just okay. But I could see both sides having a lot of upside here.
All right. You know what we do have, producer Mike? We've got a presenting sponsor here. We have PrizePicks. So we want to call them out because they've got a nice little deal set up with us. If you go through the link in our chat here, you can get up to a $100 deposit match on your first deposit. That's doubling your first deposit up to $100. And you also get a free month of OddsShopper. That's a $49.95 value. So that is like getting $150 just by going through our link here. So that's something that's key. Fun things that are over there on PrizePicks, Taco Tuesdays. On Taco Tuesdays, they will do 3 or 4 different reduced prop lines on players. That is something that is fun. They let Twitter vote on one, they let their Discord vote on one, and then they usually have one late game prop that they reduce. So that's could be basketball, could be baseball. Sometimes they work hockey in there. The early morning ones, they'll do some of their esports. Those are just some of the sports they have. You can pretty much get I think the last count I had is they have had 17 different sports that I've participated in, including Nathan's hot dog eating contest. So they have all sorts of fun things over there at PrizePicks. Taco Tuesdays, I mentioned, it's a great one. Flex Friday, if you opt in, which you should, and play a flex card of 5 or 6 players on it, you will get backing up to $20. So if you put in $20 on that card and you lose, everybody has to perform in that day. But if you lose, they will reimburse you up to $20 in PrizePicks cash. And then when you go use that, it comes out of your account first automatically. Very, very helpful. A lot of respect there for PrizePicks. They've also incorporated goblins and demons. Goblins are the little green guys. That usually means a lower reduced line from expectations. In turn, it comes with a lower payout. And the demons, that's if you have a devilish idea and you want to go higher, you will be rewarded for it. You can't pick the under on demons, but it's a fun one that's out there. So check that out. That is at PrizePicks. John Beeman, yes, living in Florida is not fun for that one little aspect, but so many other states have PrizePicks. Plus, you can still play when you travel. That is the key thing. That is the key thing. All right. Any other final thoughts on pitching, or are you ready to talk about crappy pitching, which means stacks done?
So my final thoughts are this. I'm one that, pitching is much more projectable than stacks. So I never mind riding the ownership. And today might be no different with the 3 guys getting the ownership, the best 3 pitchers on the slate. The only thing I'll say is while those guys are the 3 best pitchers, it's not like there are bad options outside them. Like, even if those 3 guys weren't on the slate, the pitching options would still be pretty good. So there are pivots scattered around, and I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world, knowing you're giving up a little projection for some ownership.
Okay, that's totally fair. And we actually have all but one lineup in. So the tools are refreshing right now. So standing at the top currently with the best top stack percentage is the Cincinnati Reds. So they are in Chicago taking on Mike Soroka. So Soroka started out as a very talented prospect coming up through the Atlanta organization. He ended up tearing his Achilles. He actually ended up being the youngest starter in modern day Atlanta history. So like back into the 20s. He was their youngest starter. He was just shy of his 23rd birthday, opening day starter, I should say. He ended up tearing his Achilles. And then after rehabilitating it, and he was working his way through the process, he tore it again. So he had to have the same Achilles surgery twice. And then last year, when he finally made it back after missing all of the 2022 season, he ended up straining, I think it was his forearm. It wasn't his elbow, so I think it must have been his forearm. So he kind of got shut down towards the end of last season. And, he's no longer younger anymore. He has exhibited some power issues. He ended up getting traded to the White Sox literally for the proverbial bag of baseballs. I went and looked up that trade this morning because I'm like, how did he just go there free agent? What exactly happened? He ended up getting traded along with, so they had to include Nicky Lopez, Jared Schuster, Riley Gallons, and Braden Schumacher. And all they got back was Aaron Bummer, the Atlanta did. He's a 30-year-old lefty, effective reliever, basically, is what my notes were, but he's not even a starter. So they gave up all of that and still just got a 30-year-old, basically interchangeable reliever that is a luxury lefty on most playoff bound teams. It's like, wow, what happened to Soroka? So he is someone that I'm willing to definitely target against. I also have my home run of the day coming from this game. So let me scroll down to that. It is going to be Will Benson. So I am very, very high on Cincinnati. There's tons of power. They tweak things around, move Spencer Steer back into the cleanup slot. Occasionally you'll see he'll probably be there more often than not, but you see Heimer Candelario sort of playing that role as well. He did with the Nationals, and from time to time he did when he was with Detroit. It's just he's a switch hitter with decent gap power, so he's not a bad guy to have as your linchpin. And he's not a traditional cleanup hitter, but he's pretty decent. But you got Spencer Steer in there today. You've got Jake Fraley, who is just outstanding, just crazy good against right-handed pitching. Nick Martini. He of the 2 martini lunch, or the two home run day. He is just 3,700. He's in there. I love this team up and down the order, but Will Benson is my standout guy. Are the Reds your number one stack for starters?
Yeah, they're the top stack on the board by a decent margin. Ownership isn't even crazy there. So I would say that I think they're going to be the most popular, but man, people love stacking against Kyle Freeland, and they love stacking against lefties, and Boston's facing a lefty with good hitting weather. So I think that Cincinnati gets ownership, but I'm not worried about it. They're expensive, which I like more in tournaments because it makes them harder to get to. So yeah, I think Cincinnati is probably the top stack, not like overwhelming. I mean, they're not in cores or anything like that, but I do think that they're probably my top stack on paper. Agreed.
All right. You hit kind of on the others, so let's explore them a little more. Let's go to Boston first here. So you've got Tyler Anderson on the mound. Tyler Anderson, you never know what you're going to get with him, but he's not being helped as a fly ball pitcher with 12-mile-an-hour breeze out to right field there. No Rafael Devers. He's dealing with shoulder discomfort, but you've got Mr. Swing and Miss himself. Bobby Dahlbach is in the lineup. Tristan Casas is outstanding against fellow lefties. You've got Tyler O'Neill, who is pretty good. Those are going to kind of be your core. I talked up Jalen Duran yesterday instead of Jaron Duran, but you can go with Jaron today. It's the leadoff hitter as well. Anything you want to call it specifically about Boston, or anything you want to say that is demeaning and degrading about Tyler Anderson?
Anderson's been good this year so far. I'm not buying it.
Small sample size.
Yeah, no, I'm not buying it. I was just in the process of saying we've read this book before with him. So
maybe he's put it all together for the 5th consecutive year.
Definitely not. But what I'm getting to is that Boston is the highest owned team on the slate. While I get it, I mean, I'd rather use the Reds, the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Angels even. Again, ownership isn't an issue, but because Boston is so cheap, it's going to allow people to get to Wheeler and Burns, certainly one of them in Barrios. So I like Boston here. I wouldn't be like fading them if I were playing a bunch of lineups. Just not sure they're going to be the team I prioritize.
No, and that's fair, because we've seen Anderson as a I would say mostly fly ball pitcher, tends to live on the edge at all times. And if it's something is just not quite hit right, it's a warning track out, or it's a high fly ball that doesn't get out, he can survive. Yeah, he hasn't allowed a run yet this season, but he has just 8 strikeouts in like what 12 or 14 innings. So is he is playing with fire. He's 34 this year. He is, he's a lefty that is adequate, and there's always going to be a place in Major League Baseball for that. But shutdown guy, not at all. Kyle Freeland, worse on the road than he is in Coors Field over the last couple of years. That's hard to do.
No, I like picking on him on the road because of that, because a lot of times teams aren't nearly as high owned, but people love rostering Toronto against a lefty. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up as the highest owned team on the slate. Now, they are a little expensive, but still, the matchup is tasty.
Call out a couple guys there. Is it anybody besides Vladdy and Bo?
Justin Turner has owned him. Again, not playing him because of that, but he profiles really well against Freeland. Alejandro Kirk has hit into some really bad luck so far this year. He profiles well in this spot. I hate Kiner Falefa, but he's 2,500 in the stack. So do with that what you will. I think maybe I'm a little off in projecting Toronto to be the highest owned team just because they are more expensive than like the Bostons of the world, although not that much more expensive.
Yeah, aside from, Vladdy is 5K on DK, Bichette 4,900, Springer 4,600.
Yeah, actually, I'm wrong. Springer and Bichette are usually over 5K, so sorry about that.
No. That makes sense. We get the algorithm has hiccups every now and then. Do you remember when Justin, God, what is he? He's like his age 37 season or 38 season. He's been around about as long as Morton there. Do you remember when he was just the absolute righty masher when he was with the Dodgers, like to a sickening level, like 8 years ago?
I do. He's had a pretty interesting career.
Yeah. All right. So we got those guys. You mentioned, we haven't gotten to Baltimore yet. Where's Baltimore rating out for you? Because the batters of Birdland were my featured stack for the early portion of the slate, the Reds for the middle portion. And then for those of you wondering, we aren't going to cover the late slate here. If you read the Spotlight Pitchers and top stacks article, you will find that I have also written up a late slate pitcher and a late slate stack. But how are you feeling about the batters of Birdland here? Colton Cowser has been amazing since getting called up. You've got just loaded with lefty lineup here. Ray is 32, 33. His best days are well behind him, and it's also warm with the wind blowing out. We mentioned that a little bit with Corbin Burns, but now we're going against a mediocre pitcher at the end of his career against an amazing up and coming offense here. Hat tip to the batters of Birdland. I don't dislike anybody in the entire lineup. Maybe Ryan Mountcastle, and that's being picky.
Yeah, I talked up Cowser a lot over the past week. He's been one of the hottest hitter in baseball. Baltimore looks good here. So to me, kind of like pitching, although the ownership isn't as concentrated, you've got 4 stacks in the Reds, Angels, Blue Jays, and Red Sox. That are the 4 top stacks on the board, and they're getting the most ownership. Right below them, Philly, New York, Baltimore, Atlanta. Those 4 aren't in as quite as good a spots as the top 4, but a big ownership discount. So most likely, I'll be focused on one of those or multiple of those 4 teams: Boston, Philly, New York, Baltimore. I like all 4 of them a lot.
No, I think that is kind of the savvy way of playing this today, and that kind of gets back to the not really wanting more than 30% of any particular picture. And you're building out 150. It's forcing more mixing and matching of these other stacks and these secondary plays. And if you land on that right combination where it ends up not being Barrios, you need the 2 expensive guys and then the random Baltimore / I don't know, pick pick another secondary stack. The
San Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah, something like that, and all of a sudden you're racing up the scoreboard or the leaderboard there, and it's like, how did somebody put that together? That was like the third and fourth best options everywhere, and or those pitchers are top two, or you end up with the Blake Snell and Wheeler, and then a Yankees stack somehow, right? By spreading things out, you allow more of those combinations to come together. And for baseball, it's all about just getting one team to break free, just one team to go racing up the leaderboard there. And that's key. You didn't hear my bad. Did you hear my bad beat story yesterday? Just quickly. I set an alarm for 6:20 on Friday. It went off. I couldn't remember why I had set it. So I turned it off. It was setting it for me to go look at Yahoo because they started their Friday slate at 6:40. So I had my weekly lineup and I entered it in a couple of I put it in a dollar contest or a quarter contest, just so when it inevitably, if I win, if they're good, then I get a little something. I had 8 players homer in that, or 7 players get 9 home runs, I think is what it was. I would have finished second in the Yahoo Baller for 2,500 if I hadn't gone back and looked at that lineup at 6:01, or pardon me, 6:41, when it popped up on my phone and said, hey, your Yahoo contests are starting. I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh God, that was what the alarm was for. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to matter. My team's going to suck. No, my team did not suck that day.
Yep.
Opportunity lost. The only reason I bring that up is when you're only playing, as you know, 1 or 2 lineups on a site, and that's all you play. When you miss that moment like that, like it wasn't even like a bad beat story. It was a dipshit. You didn't enter the contest.
That's just the pains of DFS, right? Like,
yeah,
it seems like I only remember those type of happenstances. Plenty of stuff like that's happened to me. So I'm on your side here.
Just shaking my head as they just continued hitting all freaking night. I knew I was in trouble when before my Dodgers stack started, all 3 of my unrelated one-offs hit home runs. So
Naturally,
Sean, we can't say Rhea has been good. He's been lucky. 11 innings, 5 strikeouts. Okay, that just screams I'm gonna get my ass kicked against a good team. He has last year his strikeout numbers were like not even not even barely 7 every 9 innings. So no, he's not good. He's not good. I congratulated him on somehow getting a quality start today since I've spoken this into existence. But no, good and Colin Rea, that was those words should not be used in the same sentence. What about any overlooked stacks? Anybody down there towards the bottom that you think could catch lightning in a bottle?
San Francisco got off the schneid yesterday. Now they're facing a little bit of a bullpen game. They're like midway in the top stack tool. I could see that. I guess the one, they're not like at the bottom, but they're towards the bottom, is Tampa. And this isn't a play against Snell. It's a play against Snell being Snell and potentially not getting out of the 3rd, 4th inning. And then all of a sudden, San Francisco bullpen isn't awful, but it's not great either. Depending on what happens, like you could have, and we're not talking about low owned. I'm not talking about like the Yankees who are going to be 5% owned. Tampa is going to be like 1% owned. So big ownership there. It's usually not going to work out, but I don't really like the bottom stacks today. And I could see like there's a story I could tell myself where Tampa works out.
Okay. Totally fair. Totally fair. Producer Mike, do you want to put the lineup generator up there on the screen? So let's take a peek at that. Let's run it let's do chalky stacks on FanDuel and see what pops there. So while Mike is putting that up there, I want to remind everybody, everything here is built on the Sims, and that is the next level. The lineup generator, basically Sims Lite. It's at a very affordable price point. It's something that's very helpful. It's a lot of fun to go in and utilize. For baseball, you can lock a pitcher or a hitter. You can build out your stacks, settings that you like. On DK, that would be 5-3, 5-0, and 4-4. On FanDuel, it's 4-4, 4-3-1, and 4-2-2. So that is those are your options there. You build out up to 20 lineups. They put them in a holding pen. Once they're in the holding pen there, you can go look at the ownership of your lineup and who is in your portfolio. You configure if you click on a specific player, it'll bring all those lineups up, highlighted and up to the top on the left side, so you can kind of see, is this the combinations I would like, is this something I want to change up, etc. You can swap players in and out. Now it's a little bit manual. You click on it, remove the player, just do a little bit of mental math and see how much money you have remaining, but it's pretty easy to do, especially on FanDuel, since the pricing is not as wildly divergent as it is there on DraftKings. But it is it's fun. It's easy. If you just want to come home, build some quick lineups, have a little rooting interest once you get the kids to bed or the wife's asleep and you're hanging out with the dog watching a little TV, this is the way to go. We've got it for baseball, we got it for basketball, we've got it for the NFL as well. It's a lot of fun. Definitely worthwhile, best bang for your buck tool that we have. It's also built on all the other tools, right? These lineups are created through the simulator. You just don't get to change as many settings as you do in the simulator, but it's taking just the top EV lineups up there, and we see people winning contests and placing well with them. So pretty good tool at a very affordable price point, and it also gets you access to the Discord. Let's see. What do you have for home runs today? I gave the will.
I am going to go with, and I was going to say this might be too easy, but it's definitely not. It's not Mike Trout. It's not like that. Give me Giancarlo Stanton against the left.
Okay. Okay. Actually, I'm going to allow that because Stanton is no longer young. And how many people that are playing DFS today remember that when he came up, his name was Mike Stanton?
Not as many. Not many. And I, for whatever reason, I just really loved Stanton when he came up throughout his whole Marlins career. That love has faded, but was one of my favorite players for a long time, and certainly when he was Mike.
Well, when he was Mike and playing alongside Ozuna, it was like, are those two Miami Dolphins linebackers that are playing outfield right now?
I think it was just that whole team for me. I loved Jose Fernandez. Like I had so many like of his rookie card, like good rookie cards of his. Huge fan. So I just like that whole Marlins squad.
Exactly. Oh, actually, here's a good question here from JMF. He says, how do you guys approach single entry tournaments when it comes to the lineup generator? So I would build out a few different lineups, but then you start sorting through them and seeing what you like. With baseball, you can lock in the pitcher, right? You can lock in one of the hitters. So that means you can sort of shape your pitcher and your stacks, and you just kind of see what's coming in around them and what looks good. It's pretty much going to be something you build out in those first 20 to 40 lineups that you should land on, but it helps you understand what the core is, and you can try it. If just run it a few times with balanced or with contrarian or whatever. Now, baseball being contrarian is very easy to do as compared to the NBA, and especially as we get into the NBA playoffs, we see chalk go to a whole new level here. But baseball, it's not quite that. So I would build out a few lineups. I would figure out what my 2 or 3 favorite pitchers are, what 2 or 3 stacks I would kind of like to get to, and then maybe if I don't get the stack I wanted, I get a player from there as the one-off, right? Or something like that. And then it works around something else. And then you can see what changes with the collective composite ownership, the projections, et cetera. I would worry less about the projections in baseball. It's going to be giving you the best ones anyway. And I would just kind of keep an eye on what the ownership is. But again, in baseball, it's not that hard to be different. And then if you get something that's pretty close or you like it, you can put that into the site, and then you can tweak, do one-off swaps around it. And that's probably a partial process of what Matt's doing, potentially building. Well, he's been doing this for years. So this would be you want to play like Matt, find your 10-ish or so favorite lineups, and then start culling them down into 2 or 3, or combining certain aspects of them and seeing where the pivots go and what that takes you. But that would be how I would approach it. But I think it's an absolutely perfectly fine tool for that. And as an aside, I changed what I did for NFL this last year on DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. Was just getting so annoyed that it just NFL feels like one 8-hour long getting kicked in the nuts over and over when you're playing this stuff. So what I did for each site is I wrote up the article about the lineup generator, and I would, throughout that, figuring out what I wanted, I would figure out the stacks I like both for FanDuel and DraftKings, and then it would just kind of be a byproduct for Yahoo, and I would play one lineup for each. And that'd be my like cash lineup. It'd just be like how I approach baseball. It's my main lineup. Totally fine putting in against anybody head to head, but I feel I've got enough differentiation that it can be something that does well. And I did that all via the lineup generator. So even someone like me who loves to play 150 lineups, tweak that to adjust that. So let's see here. Last thing, we'll get on out of here in about 4 minutes so we can give time for the changeover to the NBA show. But Mike, if you want to bring up OddsShopper, that is the other tool that we have. And then we'll round this out once again with our top pitchers, top stacks. But the home run calls are Will Benson and Giancarlo Stanton.
And I want to say real quick.
Oh, sure.
One stack we did not talk about at all.
Okay.
I briefly mentioned them. That was it. I know they're expensive and it's a tough matchup on paper. But how about the Braves as a contrarian stack?
The Braves are in play every single day.
Yeah.
The Braves are amazing. How they didn't end up winning the World Series, I don't know. It's just baseball and shortened series, and that's just the way things go in the postseason. But they are like a team that is built to contend for years now. It's sickening. We're back to the 13 years in a row of going to the NL Championship Series or whatever that ridiculous thing was that they did.
And I will say, usually it's rare where you see Atlanta not like a top 3 stack. They're a considerable amount down today. Luzardo's good. I'm a Luzardo guy, bad ballpark. So it's just exactly what you said. Atlanta's in play every single slate. And we say that about a lot of teams, but really Atlanta and the Dodgers, any single day, any single matchup, you can play those teams.
Completely. So like just for fun, I'm going to where is it? So I've got Luzardo up here. Where is this? I want to go to his season stats. I'm just going on last year. I'm just going 2023. I'm in Baseball Reference. What were his worst games with the most earned runs? Let's see. He had against New York 7 earned runs allowed, 2 home runs given up. Against the Giants in San Francisco in May of all, some good pitching weather, gave up 6 runs, 2 home runs. Against Milwaukee, in Milwaukee, gave up 6, 1 home run. He just doesn't have it. I haven't said it yet this year, but pitchers, 10 of their starts, they're just going to be lights out. They've got their stuff. The ball's going everywhere they want to go. 10 starts, not so good. How do they survive those 10 starts? And bad shit can happen at any time to pitchers. They don't have it. Something's not quite right. The tiniest mechanic is off slightly. Somebody gets lucky and gets just the ball right on the sweet spot and sends it out of the park instead of warning track fly. You get the Hunter Brown situation. Stuff can happen like that. Against a team like Atlanta, that can happen to any pitcher. And we don't get to say that a lot. That's all it is. It wouldn't be an embarrassment. This is like going into Coors Field. Playing Atlanta is like going into Coors Field, basically.
Yeah, their lineup's that good. I mean, up and down. It's that. That's the thing that separates them and the Dodgers. And Baltimore's close. Houston was there, but I think they've fallen off a little bit. Texas is close, especially with Atlanta. 1 through 9, they can kill you.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. All right, so producer Mike has OddsShopper up there. You can see on the screen that he is sharing. You can see the OddsShopper rating. That is the internal coding that just shows the better bets. It's going to align relatively closely to, especially for NBA, to your expected value column. The expected value is what this wager would get on a long-term time horizon on the correct book. So, Mike, if you want to click one of those down chevrons there and expand it and show how we can see all of the different books that are offering this wager, whatever it is that you're looking on, and then across all of the different the lines that are available. So you can see some of them are like, I just happen to be looking at Noah Clowney. I know this isn't what Mike's got, but under 7.5 rebounds, you get that at plus or at minus 110 on DraftKings. It's all the way down at minus 153 on Pinnacle. That's a 4% difference. And when you consider we live on the edge of trying to get 56% of our neutral bets to win, to our minus 110 bets to make it, so we're even slightly profitable. If you're donking off 4%, you're a fool. Don't do that. That's what OddsShopper means. So you can see it dramatically in home runs. There's usually one site that's going to be plus 100 or plus 200 better than the rest of the sites. Or someone, even your favorite site, FanDuel is my favorite for home run props. Sometimes it's Bet Rivers or Fliff or whatever these little tertiary sites are that are way better than FanDuel, right? So you got to look around at this stuff, because otherwise you're just lighting money on fire. And what OddsShopper is doing is it's basically just handing out 10 and 20% boosters to you by just clicking on it, finding the best site, and having money on account at that site. That's the way to survive with market-based betting. But that's $14.95 per week, $49.95 per month. So OddsShopper, pretty cool. All right, hit your top 3 pitchers, top stacks, and we're going to get on out of here for the NBA show.
I mean, pitching is easy. Barrios, Wheeler, Burns. Top 3 stacks. I'm going to go Cincy, New York, Yankees, that is, Philly.
All right. That works for me. So we're going to get on out of here. I'm dropping the DFS building blocks article link into chat there. You guys can see my favorite everything on that. Thank you to producer Mike. You can follow Matt on Twitter at FantasyTipsMatt. I am at Emac DFS. It is stochastic_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.